Alright, so in this video it's going to be a translation and discussion of the Aeneid, Book 1, lines 496 through 512. So the last time we left off is 107, so between 107 and 496, the following quickly occurs. The ships that Aeneas have with him, the 7 in number, they are going to make landfall in northern Africa. He originally had 20, remember, and one ship he knows is at the bottom, and so that means 12 ships. He does not know what happened to them and if they have obviously survived. He and his best friend Aeneid immediately are going to embark, go out hunting, kill 7 deer, one for each of the ships that they have, and obviously try and regroup, get something to eat. They dry out some grain, start making bread, stuff like that. And Aeneas and Aeneid go scouting. They run into a huntress, which is the mother Venus of Aeneas, disguised, who gives him the rundown as to obviously where he is, who Dido is, how she came obviously somewhat as a refugee from the previous place of Phoenicia and Tyre particularly. Her husband Zacchaeus has been murdered by her evil brother. Zacchaeus came to her in a dream, told her that what had gone down, told her to take the treasure of Tyre and to obviously escape. And so that's where they are. Also is going to be a moment in which she pretends to be also somewhat of a prophetess. He says, I think my parents have taught me well to be able to read the omens, and indicates that she saw a bunch of birds in the air, swans I think they were, and storm comes along, scatter them all over the place, but 12 swans made safe landfall. And so she's indicating that those 12 ships that Aeneas doesn't know about are actually safe. And so therefore, it's when she is walking away that Aeneas recognizes her as being obviously his mother and gets mad at her, yells at her, why you always got to disguise yourself? Why can't we just, have a hug and whatnot? Meanwhile, they come along to obviously a temple, and on the temple's walls, as described in ekphrasis, remember that ekphrasis is a description, a literary description of a work of art, sees that the temple displays all kinds of scenes from the Trojan War, including images of himself as a member of that Trojan War, and it is at that moment that all of a sudden Dido and her crew come rolling up. But the good news for Aeneas and, of course, his friend Achates is that before she had left them, Venus had enshrouded them in a cloud, and so therefore they are wearing an invisibility cloak of some way. And so when Dido rolls up and he is all in the cloud, they cannot see him. And just indeed to tell you what's going to happen after these lines, he also sees that some people who represent those other 12 ships, particularly Ilioneus and some others, are also rolling up to the temple at that moment. And he is worried, as we're about to see, as to what might happen, because he might witness a slaughter in front of him, in that these guys from the 12 ships could be interpreted as invaders by Dido. And so he is nervous, whereas he's happy that they have survived, that he can see them. He wonders what's going to go down. So let's go ahead and get to it. So it says, the Queen Dido, most beautiful. And here we have, obviously, again, your ablative of specification, because you could be beautiful in your attitude, beautiful in your kindness, but she, beautiful in her form. She came in, Cato, cateri, kesi, kesus means to go, and so therefore perfect tense, came in to the temple, ablative absolute, with, of course, set off by commas, a large crowd, group, squad, coterie, if you would like, of youths packing around her, implied. Stipos stipare means to pack together. And here we have Qualis introducing a simile, which of course it is modifying Diana. What sort of Diana, or just like Diana, exercises the choristers? These are her attendants on the riverbanks of the Eurota River, or through the ridges of Mount Cynthus. Diana, whom 1,000 Oreads, having followed a perfect passive looking participle, glomerator, this is where we get the word conglomerate, they gloop around her, they gather around her, hink, over from here, and hink, over from here, so on both sides. So, from here and from here, whom, Diana, 1,000 Oreads having followed, gather round. That gal, referring to Diana, wears or carries, brings a quiver, pharatram, on her shoulder, and, present active participle, going from gradi or gradi, gressasum, the, of course, deponent verb, and going, she supereminent, she surpasses omnes deos, all the goddesses. And so it then says, of course, the joys stir up the silent heart, the silent chest of Latona. Latona is Diana's mother. If we were using Artemis, we would call her Leto, who of course is the mother of both Apollo and Diana, when she is known as Latona, or Apollo and Artemis, when she is known as Leto. She's proud, is Latona, of her daughter Diana because of how regal, how royal, how upstanding she carries herself. And thus we end the simile with Talus. In such a way, or such, was Dido, just like Diana carries herself about in a regal way with all of the attendants. Same thing for Dido. In such a way, or thus in such a way, was Dido. She, the happy one, was carrying herself such, or if you would like, again, in such a way. And again, in Latin, we want to obviously use the adjective that modifies the subject, but in English, we would think it as an adverbial force, happily. She was carrying herself in such a way through the middles. She, instance, present active participle again, nominative modifying Dido, pressing on for the work in the dative case, and for the kingdoms, the ones about to be, a future active participle from sum, sa, tum. Then, Fortibus, by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, the doorways of the goddess. And here the goddess is representing the temple itself, because it is the temple of the goddess. And so then, in the doorways of the goddess, in, again, ablative, by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, the middle vault, or turtle shell, is really what testudine is. In the middle turtle of the temple, in the middle vault, she, our subject, Dido, having been enveloped, psypta, a perfect passive participle, by weapons, and so she has weapons all around it, this is her bodyguard, and having leaned upon a perfect passive looking participle, the throne highly, and so not only is it probably a high-backed throne fitting for a queen, is that she indeed sits up with proper queen posture, for a queen never lowers themselves or the head or droops their shoulders. And so, she, having been enveloped by weapons and having leaned upon the throne highly, she, perfect tense, sat down. 507. She was giving, dodari dedidatus, rights and laws to the men, and so she's the one divvying it out, she, the woman, to the men, and she was equaling out the labor of the works, opus operis, a third declension, hence why this is then genitive plural. She was equaling out the labor of those works by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, in just parts, or she was dragging them by lot. So in other words, she is not putting more work on this guy or that guy or the other guy or whomever it might be, but she's making it all, of course, equal. And for some jobs, she's just obviously running a lottery, hence by lot, lottery, and that, you know, nobody wants to be the one in charge of cleaning the sewers, and so therefore, she, to make it fair, you could imagine, would obviously just pick a random number, says, sorry, but it's random, I'm not making you clean the sewers because I dislike you and letting this guy do this job because I like him, instead by lot, so that it obviously would have fairness. Cum, when, suddenly, and the reason why when is because remember, you always look at cums. Look to see if there's an ablative with it, there is not. Then you of course have your four possible translations, when, since, and although. And this when would have an indicative, meaning when at a specific time, versus this when with a subjunctive would be non-specific time but more general circumstances, hence why it's called the cum circumstance or the cum circumstantial clause versus the cum temporal clause, specific time. And that's what we have here, because our verb wedet is obviously in the indicative present. So when suddenly Aeneas sees that, and we need some accusative subjects, and we have a bunch, sees that Antheus is accusative, and Sergestus is accusative subject, and strong Cloanthus is an accusative subject, and the others, accusative subject, of the Teucrians, they, at the same time as he sees it, are approaching, are going towards, in, by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, a large throng, group, concourse, crowd. And so these are these others of the Teucrians, whom the Ater Turbo, the black tornado, that storm that they just, of course, experienced, had dispelled, or whom that black tornado had scattered on the sea. The ichor is the levelness, and so therefore the levelness of the sea becomes the sea itself by metonymy. And deeply, This is the adverb that ends with the US, the bane of my existence. I hate adverbs that end with the US because they look like a nominative noun or an adjective, but here it is an adverb. And deeply had, again a pluperfect, carried away to, and remember that accusative often has that sense of to or towards other shores. And so we don't read after this, but indeed it is Aeneas and Achates remaining in the cloud and worried. And it says a little bit later on, having been struck by happiness and fear. Happiness, they're alive, those 12 ships we didn't know about, but fear, are we about to witness a slaughter? And so, indeed, he hears the conversation that Ilioneus begs for Dido and help and that sort of stuff, and of course Dido is going to grant it and be most of a, what's the word I'm looking for, fair and welcoming leader and ruler. She really is painted in a great light here at the end of Book 1, and it is at that moment that Aeneas and Achates will step out of the cloud and be invited to a banquet that night. But nevertheless, we only have to go to 512 and this iteration of the AP Latin syllabus, and so thanks for watching, good luck, and keep studying.